You're listening to the Rethreading Madness podcast, which airs live on Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. We are recorded and produced on the unceded traditional territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations around Vancouver, BC. I'm your host, Bernadine Fox, and this is the show that dares to change how we think about mental health. Welcome to our show.
I've never been further, knowing what the hell I'm gonna do when I can't seem to find my way under or over or through. Just when I'm ready to give up the fight, there you are when we turn out the lights, and it's alright, it's alright.
I'm Bernadine Fox, and I'm here today with Amy Lyn Johnson. Tell us who you are.
Yeah, I would. So I'm a licensed professional counselor, and thank you so much for having me on. I'm always happy to talk about mental health issues, especially for the consumer.
Yes.
And I had a private practice for many, many years, and I became interested in the topic of therapy abuse and ethical therapy and boundary violations when I discovered a colleague was sexually exploiting a patient. And what I learned from that experience helped me realize the need for more education about what constitutes appropriate therapy, and for consumers to just become more aware of the warning signs of unethical therapy and unethical therapists.
That's wonderful. We need that so much, and especially here in BC, there just is no place that mental health consumers can get unvarnished, unmitigated information about what are the boundaries in therapy. And so often we walk into therapy believing that our therapist, and of course believing our therapist is going to tell us what's right and wrong in the course of therapy. One of the things I wanted to talk with you about today was this sort of gray area of what to do when, in a social situation, you as a client run into your therapist. And in particular, what is the parameters of how it should be handled if, for instance, you walk into a meeting, an AA meeting, or another meeting that has to do with disclosure of confidential personal information, and your therapist is there? What is the appropriate action that a therapist should take at that point?
That's a really great question, and it's a question that's in so many training programs in your Ethics 101 class, this exact scenario. And, of course, it's always important for any client to do whatever it is that makes them feel most comfortable. Obviously, they have their rights. They're able to do whatever they want. But for the therapist, the responsibility it melds over into that situation. And so what we recommend is that the therapist remove herself immediately and discreetly so that there's no conflict there, and so that this client can, have the meeting freely. And then the therapist can, address it in the follow-up session very very briefly. It doesn't, she doesn't have to make a big deal of it, but mostly it is just to acknowledge that they were both there and that the therapist doesn't expect that client to disclose anything about their experience or their reason for being there to the therapist. So that's just an important point I wanted to make, Bernadine, is that, just because you're a client and you're in therapy with someone, it doesn't mean that therapist has a right to know everything about you before you're ready to tell that therapist.
Right.
And so, and I always say to my clients, all of my questions are voluntary. You can always pass. Just because someone asks you a question doesn't mean you have to answer it. Right. And so it's important that the client doesn't feel like, because there's all sorts of reasons someone might be there. They might be there for a friend. They might be there for a class. They might be there for their own recovery, but they don't owe their explanation for being there to the therapist if recovery hasn't already come up. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And also, what about who gets to attend that particular meeting? Like, whose responsibility is it to remove themselves from that meeting from that point on?
So the way that I see it, and there may be different perspectives, but for me and my colleagues who are ethics professors, the way that we see it is it's really incumbent on the therapist to remove themselves. They can, if it's a meeting they've been attending for a long, long time, there are a few meetings in the area, that can be processed in the session. If this client doesn't have any particular need to go to that session, they can agree to, okay, this is when I go, and so we won't meet up again.
Right.
But if the client is really interested in continuing to attend that meeting for their own recovery, I feel like it's the therapist's job to remove herself and support the client's recovery.
Yes, I think it's always the therapist's responsibility to make sure that the boundaries are being held, and certainly given the nature of an AA meeting or another type of meeting like that, one of those boundaries is to maintain not disclosing personal information to your client.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So that's wonderful.
So they shouldn't be attending the same meeting ever.
No.
And again, just to reiterate that as soon as the therapist sees her client at this meeting, she should discreetly remove herself.
Right.
So that the client is comfortable disclosing anything in the group that he or she wants to.
Right. Thank you, Amy, so much for that. I hope I get you back on another time to talk about other kinds of issues that come up when we are looking at the issues of healthy boundaries in a therapeutic healing relationship.
Yeah, I would look forward to speaking with you again.
I'm Bernadine Fox, and you've just listened to Rethreading Madness, the podcast that dares to change how we think about mental health. We air live on Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM, every Tuesday at 5 p.m. or online at coopradio.org. If you have questions or feedback about this program or want to share your story or have something to say to us, we want to hear from you. You can reach us by email, rethreadingmadness@coopradio.org. If you enjoyed this show, subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.
I've never been further from knowing what the hell I'm gonna do when I can't seem to find my way under or over or through. Just when I'm ready to give up the fight, there you are when we turn out the lights, and it's alright, it's alright, don't you worry, it'll be alright. Why do I always believe it when you tell me everything's gonna be alright? Yeah. Why don't I wonder how you know? Well, surely you don't have all of the facts. You could be just making it up. Why don't I ever think of that? It's some kind of magic in the words that you breathe, saying, baby, take it from me. It's alright, it's alright, don't you worry, it'll be alright. Why do I always believe it when you tell me everything's gonna be alright? Everything's gonna be alright. With anyone else, it's such a cliche, just words